When Donald Trump assumed office as President of the United States in January 2025, having won a big mandate in November the previous year, many people did rightly speculate that his second tenure will be more dramatic than his first. Dramatic it certainly has been, but it's also been destructive in more ways than one. And it might all come back to bite Trump and his administration in a big way.
We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier.
Let's begin with American foreign policy. When Trump invited President Zelensky of Ukraine to the Oval Office in February this year, and all hell broke loose as the two presidents sparred about the way forward, we knew there would be trouble on the foreign policy front.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this.
I'm
you're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position.
For all his proclamations that he end the Russia-Ukraine war, Trump has failed in his endeavors so far. This is despite a one-on-one meeting with Putin in Alaska. In fact, there's been an intensification of the war effort from both the sides at multiple stages this year.
I think he has an extraordinary political skill. He communicates very well. And to be fair to the man, he sees problems. He has an imagination and he thinks about things in different ways. My trouble is the execution. The execution is chaotic and destructive. And so when I said the other day on the record that, yes, I've now concluded that he does not understand economics at all, that is the product of about a decade of thinking about this guy, my patience has run out and my objective analysis is that the only way to describe what he's doing with India is either that he is too silly to understand what the impact is, or he's doing it on purpose. And again, that for me, when you think about the United States president doing things on purpose against the U.S. national interest, that's when I start to glitch out, because it's very strange.
Trump's approach has been riddled with inconsistency. For someone who does not want to embroil the United States in conflicts in the rest of the world, Trump did not hesitate to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. There's every possibility that the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas might embroil the entire region into conflict, and it has in some ways.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
When India retaliated against Pakistan through Operation Sindoor following the Pahalgam terror attack, Trump falsely claimed that he had brokered a ceasefire by using trade as a stick to get both sides to stop fighting. It perhaps represented a prominent first instance of a trust deficit between India and the United States. India repeatedly denied that Trump played any role, but Trump has only tried to double down on his claims.
I'm talking to a very terrific man, Modi of India. And I say, what's going on with you in Pakistan? Then I'm talking to Pakistan on trade. I said, what's going on with you in India? And the hatred was tremendous. Now, this has been going on for a hell of a long time, like sometimes with different names for hundreds of years. But I said, what's going on? I said, I don't want to make a trade deal. No, we want to make a trade deal. I said, no, I don't want to make a trade deal with you. you're going to have a nuclear war. You guys are going to end up in a nuclear war. And that was very important to them. I said, call me back tomorrow, but we're not going to do any deals with you, or we're going to put tariffs on you that are so high. You were there, Howard, right? Yeah. You're going to put tariffs on you that was so high, I don't give a damn. Your head's going to spin. You're not going to end up in a war. Within about 5 hours, it was done. It was done. Now, maybe it starts again. I don't know. I don't think so, but I'll stop it if it does. We can't let these things happen.
The relationship worsened when Trump invited the Pakistani Field Marshal Asim Munir for lunch. India's repeated concerns over cross-border terrorism from Pakistan, which has received support and patronage from the Pakistani state and military, clearly went unheeded.
These are not the policies that were pursued in the administrations of President Clinton and President Obama, of which I was a part. They are not the policies that I would, as a professional economist, recommend. They don't correspond to the theories that I teach my students. I think in many respects the policies are unwise. I recognize that, as President Trump has powerfully pointed out, that many Americans feel that the United States has underwritten a system, and that while it has derived benefits, so large a fraction of the benefits have gone to others that it becomes problematic at a certain point for many Americans, particularly those who've been left behind within our own economy. So I understand the impulse behind these policies, but my view has always been that the United States best succeeds by promoting a prospering global economy in which Americans can flourish both as producers and as consumers. And I don't think aggressive protectionism is the best way towards that objective. And I think that high tariffs, particularly high tariffs imposed on products that often are very important inputs for American producers, are a particularly problematic strategy.
And the situation turned worse when Trump decided to impose a penalty on India for looking out for its energy security. Trump imposed a further 25% tariff, taking the total tally to 50% because India was purchasing oil from Russia. Never mind the hypocrisy of Trump that his country bought uranium and fertilizers from Russia, that the Biden administration had encouraged India to buy oil from Russia to keep global oil prices stable. Or the double standards wherein a country like China that buys more oil from Russia is spared harsh tariffs, but India is singled out.
Anywhere in the world, they've been very strong on tariffs, and I don't blame them necessarily, but it's a different way of doing business. It's very hard to sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. We are right now a reciprocal nation. We are going to, if it's India or if it's somebody else with low tariffs, we're going to have the same. We're going to have whatever India charges, we're charging them. Whatever another country charges, we're charging them. So it's called reciprocal, which I think is a very fair way. When this isn't India, this is among a lot of nations. The European Union is very difficult for us, very, very difficult. They tax our companies at levels that nobody's ever seen before. They take advantage of a lot of things, so we're not happy about that. China, of course, is terrible, and we have to do that just as a mechanism of fairness.
Add to this the infantile statements of Trump's aide, Peter Navarro, who said that Ukraine war is Modi's war, and that Brahmins are profiteering from Russian oil. If there was a fit case of one's remark alienating a strategic partner, this was it.
Yeah, Navarro's an idiot. And I mean, he's also a loose cannon who says all kinds of things that are not particularly well anchored in history, facts, data, economic theory. I think what concerns me more is the lack of discipline in the administration's messaging. You mentioned in the setup that I worked for a couple of secretaries of state. My two bosses in the George W. Bush administration, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, I mean, Condi never would have put up with this kind of thing. So in a more conventional administration, you'd have a national security process that's designed to, at minimum, enforce some message discipline and then put options in front of the president. But what we have here is a lot of people kind of freelancing their individual and personal theories about not just what drives U.S.-India relations, but, you know, craziness about India, its politics, its society. It's not particularly helpful. So I tweeted last night that it was high time for Mr. Rubio, who's not just the Secretary of State, but the National Security Advisor, and has a pretty good head on his shoulders, to enforce some discipline here. So I think part of the challenge we have is we have a highly undisciplined administration populated by highly undisciplined people, and we don't have a lot of process. And that's, to go back to the last question you asked me, reflective of the president himself. But it's not good for trying to develop a relationship that's well anchored, and I think that's why we kind of ended up in the mess that we're in.
No wonder then that the camaraderie between President Putin, President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi stood out during the SCO summit in China. Will President Trump's policies prompt a realignment, and if so, to what extent? That remains to be seen. Home as well. Trump's deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles as well as Washington, D.C. The use of central forces to quell protests has not gone down well with the American public. One court even struck down the decision pertaining to the deployment of federal troops in Los Angeles. And there's been another setback in the courts. A federal court of appeals also struck down most of the reciprocal tariffs imposed by Trump as unconstitutional. It said that the law did not allow him to use his emergency powers to impose reciprocal tariffs without authorization of the US Congress. Not just this, the Trump administration is being asked some serious questions, including from some Republicans themselves, about the Epstein files. The demand is for a full disclosure, with the assertion that the information that has now been put out has largely appeared in the public domain earlier. On September 3, multiple survivors spoke about their ordeal at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein, once a friend of Donald Trump, before they had a falling out.
On behalf of these women, but also as a strong message to every innocent child, teenager, woman, and man that is being held captive in abuse. This should never happen in America, and it should never be a political issue that divides us.
It's important for their own closure. They don't know their own abuse. They want to understand what's in these files for themselves. And third, we heard that there are many others who obviously were involved. And they want to know, and the American people deserve to know what was there in those files. I actually think they're helping us come together as a country.
If Ghislaine Maxwell were pardoned, it would undermine all the sacrifices I made to testify and make mockery of mine and all survivors' suffering. That is why the Epstein Files Transparency Act is so essential. It requires the Department of Justice release all the records related to Epstein and Maxwell investigations, flight logs, immunity deals, internal communications, and even the records surrounding Epstein's detention and death. And crucially, it forbids withholding documents simply because of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. This is about ending secrecy wherever abuse of power takes root.
I was a 16-year-old high school student athlete who made good grades and had high aspirations for college when I was recruited and asked by a classmate of mine alongside with a 20-year-old male if I wanted to give an old rich guy a massage. But what high school girl would not want to do that? That day changed my life forever. And when I got into the massage room, Jeffrey Epstein undressed and asked me to do things to him. My eyes welled up with tears, and I have never been more scared in my life. When it was over, he paid me $200 and requested in exchange that I bring a girl each time to make another $200. I told him I did not want to do that, and then he gave me an ultimatum. Either you come here and massage me when I call you, or you bring me friends of yours to massage, and I will give you $200 per girl for each time she comes. I felt and hoped to never hear from him again, but he called me every day. He was so wealthy and powerful, and he would not let me go. I felt I had no choice. If I disobeyed him, I knew something bad would happen. So knowing I did not want to be sexually abused, I started to bring him other girls from my high school, and he paid me $200 for bringing them.
I was only 14 years old when I met Jeffrey. It was the summer of high school. I was working 3 jobs to try to support my mom and my sister when a friend of mine in the neighborhood told me that I could make $300 to give an older guy a massage. It went from a dream job to the worst nightmare. Jeffrey assistant Leslie Groff would call me and tell me that I needed to be at the house so often that I ended up dropping out of high school before 9th grade. And I never went back. From 14 to 17 years old, I went and worked for Jeffrey instead of receiving an education.
Brave survivors who have entrusted us with the privilege of speaking today on behalf of Virginia. Robert Giuffre, as her family. This is about justice against the rich and powerful who have stolen something from these women and many children at the time, their freedom. The freedom to live their life without mental and physical scars that have been inflicted upon them by those who thought they were untouchable. The same freedom that these monsters took from these survivors, they should never be afforded. They should never be allowed to continue their lives with impunity.
We are not asking for pity. We are here demanding accountability, and I'm demanding justice. Congress must choose. Will you continue to protect predators, or will you finally protect survivors? And also, I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved.
Why weren't all the files being disclosed? Is there an attempt to protect someone? Trump, however, claims that this is all a Democratic hoax.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
But what's curious is the fact that a senior official of the Department of Justice spoke to an undercover reporter claiming that the names of Republicans will be redacted from the so-called Epstein client list, while the names of Democrats will be kept intact. There was a retraction by way of a written statement later, saying that he was only referring to what's being said in the media. But it has only fueled further speculation about what's on that list.
And those files do exist.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages of files. They'll redact every Republican or conservative.
And those files do exist.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages of files. They'll redact every Republican or conservative person in those files. Leave all the liberal, Democratic people in those files.
And they've got Maxwell person.
Yeah.
And also involved.
Got transferred to a minimum security prison too recently, which is against BOP policy because she's a convicted sex offender. They're offering her something to keep her mouth shut.
Is Trump facing isolation at home as well as abroad? If it is largely of his own doing, due to the controversial decision he's made. What will happen in the future is anybody's guess. but for the time being, he seems to have no intention to back down.